Okay, that was
I think we're gonna get back to the journey.
yeah. So back to what you asked about. Yeah.
No. We're gonna dive into this.
Okay, cool.
I've sat with many founders.
Yeah.
In the seat. I haven't heard many start out by saying, "Yes, this is not my first rodeo, but this is my life mission."
Right, it is.
So, what is that about? Itamar Friedman, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Thank you so much for being here. How are
20
you?
minutes. Thank you for hosting me.
Of course. We're going to run for a little bit more than 20 minutes because for the things that I have here, it's way too much.
Okay.
Really excited to have you here, Itamar. We started to get to know each other over the last few months.
Yeah.
Last time we spent in Seattle
right.
at AWS. Well, both reInvent and previously with the accelerator. Today you're running Qodo. This is not your first startup. It's not your first rodeo.
Right.
Not the first complex deep tech journey that you're on. And, you know, in preparation for this conversation, getting to look at the breadth of things that you got to deal with, the breadth of experiences that you've had, from your military service to your academic career to the organizations that you've been a part of, from startups to larger companies like Alibaba, and working on a variety of different tasks, from vision to now code generation and even much more than code generation. So really interesting. And I'd love to start there. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you got even into this startup and high-tech scene.
Yeah, sure. So first, it isn't my first rodeo and not my first startup, for example, but it is my life mission, except, of course, family, you know, things like that. This is really my life mission, and we're probably going to talk about it. I think what we're doing at Qodo, to put it in the most simple way, like code testing, code review, actually we frame it as code integrity. And if you take it a broader aspect of it, it's like verifying the integrity of the code that is being generated by AI. It's going to be so important for the future of humanity. I'm not kidding. So although like it is like another step in my career, I see it as the most important and critical one. Probably going to invest my life into it. Okay, that was a.
I think we're going to get back to the journey.
Yeah. So back to what you asked about. Yeah.
No. We're going to dive into this.
Okay. Cool.
I've sat with many founders.
Yeah.
In the seat. I haven't heard many start out by saying, "Yes, this is not my first rodeo, but this is my life mission."
Right. It is.
So, what is that about?
Yeah. I think like at this point, people don't think I'm crazy anymore. Like, for example, my wife, before ChatGPT, she was like, "Hey, like you're putting, your thoughts and life into AI in a way that is slightly disturbing." And it was quite hard to explain how I think about the impact of AI is going to have on each one of us on our lives. And I think at this point there is consensus, it's mainstream, that it's going to change. Like it's hard for us to predict exactly how, but I think like many people understand it's going to change. Even my wife now is continuously, like she's a physician, continuously using ChatGPT, and before that she thought it's never going to work or be ridiculous. And so as we like going to discuss like how the future of AI is going to evolve, I think that we can agree that AI is going to know to write code really well, and it's going to be a fundamental tool for the AI wherever it's going to work, whether in robotics or whether in software development or biology or security. It's going to write code as it progresses. Like it's going to be like, that's an assumption that I have in my mind. And if it writes code with no human review at all, and it's just going to run it and use it, it's going to be really critical that it's going to be done in a way that is safe, that it's aligned with our values and aligned with the creator value, the user value, the civilization values, etc. And it's a bit far right now, like directly to what we're doing at Qodo, but it's actually very connected. Like in the most fundamental, like most like a simple way, like what we're doing is code testing and code review. But when you look on Qodo's tool, and sorry for the shameless plug here, when you look on Qodo's tool, one of the things that we're trying to do with Qodo Merge, for example, it's the pull request agent. We're trying to verify best practice of the organization. Now, right now, the best practice of the organization is like, engineering best practice, because right now AI is writing like components, but when it writes like full features end to end, the best practice is not only like make it maintainable this way or use SQL like this way. It's like, hey, we want to make sure that you're not writing this stuff into the database, or you're not sending that data, or you're not going to ruin that. It's going to be much more high level, even in the matter of values of the company, and that's, for me, I think it's going to be really critical for us companies and in the civilization. I'm serious about that.
So help me make this distinction. I remember 5 years back there was a really interesting startup by a good friend of mine, Shimon Toltz.
Yeah,
and he was looking at how to take, if I remember correctly, pull requests on GitHub in enterprises, and being able to identify misconfigurations in policy, secrets, different things that engineers did, human-led errors that are not in line with the security posture policies of the organization.
Yep.
And it sounds to me like you're looking almost at this in the similar area where there is this activity of we're generating these features or these solutions, and we want to integrate them into the larger ecosystem of our organization or to deploy them to customers. And there's a set of things that we need to check for as we do that. But it sounds like you're talking about a massive shift and evolution that we need to check for. So can you dive in a bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. So Shimon and what they did in that tree, for example, is very specific. It's very technical.
Yeah.
And there is many other, like there is Sonar Cube, whatever, like linting, for example, of code. But as AI progress in both sides of the equation, the code generation, but also verifying its intent, its correctness, its alignment with your best practices, etc. It could go a higher level than like technically make sure you didn't configure something badly. Rather that, for example, you're not sharing information between two users in order to convert one of the users to pay more or buy something. Like this is not according to the value of the company. But no one is going to look at that code, right? At some point. So you need to make sure that there's another piece of software, which is also AI, that will make sure that this best practice actually happens. That our AI that's developing a feature, and there is some product manager that told it, I want 2% more conversions on this with this type of feature. Generate me a few options. It got an option, but it doesn't know what it's doing under the hood, because right now, like, there is no developer in most cases reviewing it. I'm talking about the future, not right now, right? 5 years from now. So at that point, we need to have all those that AI, those systems that not only checks like the configuration is right and there is no functional problem or performance problem, but actually also align with the values of how you wanted the software to behave. So what I'm saying is that at Qodo, we're building towards that future. Like, we already have a few features of that, but obviously it's not there yet, because also the other side is not there yet. The code generation is not there yet. You're seeing like amazing stuff on Twitter X and whatever, LinkedIn, a 7 years old girl building software, but or a freelancer, like a prosumer, like a professional, doing a website in 3 hours or 3 minutes instead of 3 weeks. But that's not complicated software. AI is not there yet. Like, we're now in beginning of 2025, right? While we're recording, is not yet like completely change the paradigm in complex software development, but it's going to happen. And I actually think it's going to happen in like late 25, 26. And when that happens, we need to also be ready to protect ourselves, security, like testing, but also on, especially as we progress 2027, 28, on the integrity. And that's why I'm saying like it's my life mission, because I think it's important for humanity. I think like there could be so many CrowdStrike moments. Sorry, CrowdStrike. Like, it's a really good example. Yeah. But also that's like a very technical thing. But there also could be like weird stuff that CrowdStrike and we want to prevent that. So I think it's really critical, and that's why I'm saying that. Yeah.
I want to get back to the integrity in a minute, because I think that there's interesting, even half philosophical questions about, what is the world that we're entering, and what could it look like with high integrity, with integrity that's less. You're alluding to the CrowdStrike moments, right, where there's massive disruptions because of software that's either not secure or not operating correctly, but I think there's also could be misalignment in the values which you bring into the software itself.
That's my point.
Right. And we're looking at healthcare, we're looking at military, we're looking at energy, nuclear, right?
Exactly.
So many different everything in the world. But I want to hear a little bit about your perspective. So you've been following. You started Qodo almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, right? In July of 2022.
Yeah, we like the paper. Like, sorry for interrupting. The pen dropped on. We're going to start doing this, and that was July, and actually like starting moving fastly with recruiting people, etc. Was around September, where we raised our series our seed. So I would say like around September 2022, like
so about 3 months before ChatGPT.
That's how I like to say 2-3 months BC before ChatGPT.
No, it's funny. I'm curious to hear what triggered it. I was in July of 2022. I was with Innovation Endeavors, and I remember I spent about a year diving into LLMs and into the emergence of deep learning in the context also of security. And I was presenting this 100 slide presentation to the team about, okay, here's where LLMs were from bag of words all the way to now. I don't know what's going to happen next, but it's coming. And the cat is out of the box. But what prompted you to start?
Sure.
What was that defining moment?
Yeah, sure. And this way I can also finally relate to my past that you wanted me to relate to. So really quickly, I'll do samples from my history because it's related. So for example, as a student, I worked in Mellanox, later to be acquired by NVIDIA. It's a really awesome company. And what I did there is actually verification. I did also some, module like chip design, etc. But I actually weirdly liked the verification part, which is usually
I'll tell you.
What I liked doing there is automating the verification. That's and then the interesting thing is that when you do that for hardware, it's actually makes a lot of sense that you can actually do that even in 2010 or 2006 even. Why? That's where I did that, because when you're thinking about hardware, it's bytes in, bytes out, and then you can do stuff like formal verification and other type of verification that you can automate with regular algorithms, etc. And then I asked myself, because I was doing software development at the same time, can I apply these techniques also to software? And my answer was quickly no, because in software, 90% of the cases, I don't have exact number, but it's not bytes in, bytes out. It's story in, story out. How do you do software development? You have user stories, you have dev stories. There are stories, the natural language, human stories. You have to have machine learning to close that gap. I did my bachelor, master degree in the Technion, and I did a few stuff. And my last a few things. My last company was acquired by Alibaba. Let's skip how that happened. We basically aimed for the Chinese and APAC as the target market. Alibaba was our biggest customer, etc. And actually, weirdly, probably I had really good time in Alibaba. I think there's less than 10 entrepreneurs, I tell you, that are doing good time in enterprise, let alone a Chinese one. But one of the reasons is because Alibaba is an amazing school for machine learning. So I did machine learning from 2006, but what you said, XGBoost and whatever. In 2010, I did a neural network, 4 layers, sorry. But there was an amazing school, and during what I call the golden time of the research era, 2017 to 2021 is when the research flourished, and now we're talking about commercialization of AI, right? So that was amazing. And during this time, every time someone told me AI, I was a bit puking inside, and okay, I can play ball, but I would call it ML, and I didn't want to call it AI. But by the end of 2021, as a team that was building foundation models and AutoML, like we were starting ourselves to realize that, hey, we're starting to do stuff that does feel like intelligent to some extent. And then like I started also writing posts on Medium like early 2022. Interesting people like wrote me like, you're hallucinating about the effect of that. Right now it's like a really funny,
You
like
brought the term to
yeah,
us.
yeah.
Got it.
And then like I realized that Copilot and etc. just the beginning, because in complex software, like bringing back my history in complex software and complex hardware, etc., like writing the Verilog VHDL or in software, like just like maybe 10%, 15%, 30% of what you do, the most. All the rest like is a lot about verifying that what you're actually doing works, because the cost of shipping hardware that doesn't work, or the cost of breaking an app that is in charge of transportation and financial services is so high that you need to put effort into that. And then I thought it's time like that like we try to tackle that really hard problem, which is not solved even until today, right? Like I'm not saying the Qodo solved testing or code review 100%. If we did that, I would A, win the Nobel Prize, and B, like solve software, right? If you solve testing and code review.
Absolutely. So if we're actually looking from, I guess, late 2021, or even if we can go even a little bit back. So, I remember, even when I was still in my army service, writing code, we had these amazing tools, IntelliSense and a bunch of these tools that helped us be more productive in the IDE. And obviously we had Stack Overflow. It feels like the velocity is constantly changing in the context of code generation. A lot of people are talking about how AI is evolving at an incredible pace. I'm looking at it in the context of diffusion models and guns, right? In the context of video and audio. I'm really curious to hear though your perspective on the velocity of change of AI in the context of text and as it pertains to code generation, because you really get a front row seat to it from the very beginning.
Awesome. So first I want to say that I think evolution, progress is actually a concatenation of S-shaped progress. And the thing is that, and Ray Kurzweil in Singularity is Near, and now there's the book Singularity is Nearer that I didn't read yet, but I have to, talks about like something similar, that the speed of like technology progress is growing. Like there's a second order, positive second order, and what I think is actually the S curves are getting closer to each other. Like you have those S curves, and the thing is that the breakthroughs that enables those S curves are getting closer and closer. And one thing I want to say, that I think one of the most important breakthroughs we must have is actually energy. Because if you really want to deploy AI in scale, like right now, the bottleneck I think is like the hardware and energy mostly, and not about algorithms or data. And that's why you see like companies like Google, Oracle, AWS buying like nuclear power and stations, etc. And I think we will need to see more progress there, or things like I just mentioned, because I think in fact that at this moment I'm not sure that LLMs are the bottleneck anymore. I'm not saying we can't progress further. For example, inference time or test time, like scale. If you know what I'm talking about, I'm saying like until today, like when you ask a model to solve a task, make a prediction, or so, it will just run one time. Run the model once, and now there's architectures like you see in the models o1, o3 by OpenAI that can actually go back and run a few times for one query and decide about that themselves. So that's like kind of a breakthrough that we knew it's going to happen. It's not like the concept wasn't new, but now the know-hows are there to make it happen. So that's very important, like for the model being able to think a bit further. Like we can talk about it later, system 1, system 2, like but at the same time, I don't think right now that's what's stopping us. I think it's a matter of energy, and a matter of a few actually engineering breakthrough we can talk about. And therefore, I think that we are still going to see a lot of progress in applications, in the usage of AI, because we don't yet, in my opinion, like fully exploiting the LLMs at this moment. Let me clarify just to make sure. I'm saying that the breakthrough happened of the large language models being able to do unsupervised learning, being able to use reinforcement learning to get to these awesome models, and we are going to progress. But now I'm claiming that we're in the middle of the S-curve, and mostly like now actually applying application. We see encoding, support, security, and there's a lot more to value to attract from there. And then I think the next breakthroughs are actually, in my opinion, is going to be like on frontier that is going to help us like use that and scale. And that's why, in my opinion, you see like companies like we just today morning there was a new Stargate or whatever, I forgot the name, announcement.
$500 billion.
On building
AI infrastructure investment.
Yeah, it's an infrastructure. Notice that they're focusing on infrastructure, on the hardware, on the energy,
yes.
and that's I think where we're aiming at, and that's why I think like also like the progress is going to happen fast, because we didn't yet got to the top of the S-curve of like exploiting the application, etc. And when we get there, I think like a lot of resources being built to also cross the next S-curve, which is in my opinion going to be energy, hardware, etc.
I think it's such an interesting point of view, and one that I fully agree with. And I think just considering this question of what are the breakthroughs that we need to distinguish, and then what are just efforts that need to be done to then use these breakthroughs, and hearing your perspective that yes, there are going to be obviously more research breakthroughs in AI over the years, right? I'm excited about the way that AI is going to have to also be able to look at the physical world and make sense of it in different ways, like what Fei-Fei Li's trying to do. But but thinking about the way that you're looking at, okay, so we had these significant breakthroughs in LLMs. We are now just scratching the tip of the iceberg on what's possible to do,
right?
And we're at the precipice of the creation of this newfound infrastructure, the energy that's going to help bring now the application layer and the commercialization layer here, and I think that's just it's just very exciting.
Yeah, so I can relate to the coding specifically that I didn't mention, because I did want to like lay the ground about like the AI breakthroughs and progress in general. So I think like coding is a good example that on one hand we already using LLMs quite nicely to progress faster with software development, and in some aspect of software development I do think there is a paradigm shift. I call that like the simple software. Right now, like I mentioned before, you can do simple like a blog or a simple website that take you 3 weeks to develop, or you would use Wix to build. Now you can build like just like a number 3 hours and get the code and as a different than Wix, for example, and that's like a paradigm shift. But I think we're not there yet, as I mentioned. Right now, early 2025, we're paradigm shift in complex software, but I don't think it's an LLM bottleneck anymore. Now there's a need to use the LLMs, like I mentioned, again, shameless plug, for properly set the ground to use AI, set the systems and engineering to use AI for testing, code review, understanding complex and wide code bases, reading your documentation and different technical documents and design documents, reading your test plans, reading, like, there's a lot of reading and digestion that needs to be done in order to really put AI on each part, in each like sub workflow on the overall software development lifecycle of complex software. And I don't think the LLM is the bottleneck anymore. It's now a lot of engineering work that is expediting as well, because a lot of those companies that are doing that are dogfooting on themselves, and that's why, like, although it seems a bit far, I think we will see in complex software a paradigm shift. Like, it's hard to imagine right now, but by the end of 2025, early 2026. So I think, like, I didn't relate to that. I think, like, the untapped, like, areas is around code review, code testing, and just because I'm like, we're leading at Qodo, I want to give another evidence is, like, CEO of AWS. He stood on in the keynote and reInvent, like, just a couple of months ago, and he said, "Hey, we checked with Fortune 5,000 companies, and on average, a developer write code 1 hour a day." And all the rest is actually in complex software is around testing, code review, etc. So, like, I think it's by now, like, quite clear that this is where we can use LLM to change software development. And I'm talking about the next 2-3 years. Like, in 5-10 years, it's going to be crazier.
I think that's. I mean, I started this show back in 2020. It's incredible to me constantly, the shift in the tone and the conversation. I used to be talking in 10-year lengths predictions. Here we're talking about a year and a half, 2 years, and I think that's awesome. I think that's just incredible. If you had to think through over the last year or so, significant breakthroughs you've experienced, not necessarily just in the technology, but also in the usage and in the way that we use code generation tools, Qodo, different. What breakthroughs are we actively experiencing right now, or what breakthroughs are you contributing to right now? Yeah,
awesome. So I think we started, like, LLMs are trained to predict the next token, right? So it's very fitting in the UX, in user experience, user interface, that it will help you to autocomplete code, like predict the next tab, like tap, like the next word or even sentence or even like a few paragraphs ahead. So that's what we, like, that was the first use case, is that really fits the LLM technology, and that's like why I think there was a great match and product market fit, etc. Now, the thing is that the breakthroughs that we're noticing is that we're able to use models also to complete tasks end to end, not just autocomplete the next word. For example, at Qodo, we released early 2024, is a year ago actually. It feels like a decade at least ago, but exactly a year ago, we released Alpha Codium. Alpha Codium is our take on Google's DeepMind Alpha Code. We have we have one area in our system design that is very different than theirs, and that's why ours was significantly better. In Alpha Code by DeepMind, what they said is the model is the most important part that needs to make the decisions, and and all you need to do is just prompt it many times. So what they did is train the model to win coding competitions. Okay, the context here is that Alpha Code is Alpha Code by DeepMind is a solution that with a click of a button you can compete on coding competition, like similar to chess.com. So there's a competition.com that's called Code Forces, and what they did is they trained a model to work really well in competition, and then given a problem, they would call the model, give us 10,000 possible solutions. And then there's another model that, for example, chooses the best one, and they submit it. That's a workflow. We call it a workflow of two steps. Like, just the first step is like you're exhausting the model there. What we did is build a full workflow And like you can call it, if you like, an agent, although I think there is a very important difference between a workflow and agent. We can talk about it. Anthropic actually wrote a really good blog about it. And we build a workflow with 12 steps, 12 nodes in the graph, and not like 2. And part of these nodes were focused on code testing and code review, and we doubled the performance and then DeepMind, and we wanted to give them credit. That's why we call it Alpha Codium. Our original name, by the way, of the company and the product was Codium, Codium, and we changed to Qodo, which stands for quality of development, and not just like Codium that feels like a code model or autocomplete or so. So with Alpha Codium, like, we actually managed to build a flow that with a click of a button, you get to a master level programmer in coding competition. And if you plug O1 by itself reaches really good like accuracy. But if you plug it inside Alpha Codium, it raises the performance of O1 by 50%. That's a lot. Usually, like the uplift there is harder task, harder question. Even if you compare like even to O1 IOI, which was designed and like trained to compete this, Alpha Codium does better with a inferior model. We didn't manage to put our hands on O3 yet, and I guess that it's happened the same. Although O3 is reaching by itself a really high score, with Alpha Codium, we think. So back to your point, it was like an example to share that workflows and agents are real breakthroughs. And in 2024, we saw them completing simple tasks end to end. And I think, and by the way, to be frank, simple task and simple software. And I think that in 2025, we're going to see them solve simple tasks in complicated software. That's a real paradigm shift in complicated software. And then in 2026, we're going to see them solve complicated tasks in complicated software. And then like that's nailing it, the paradigm shift. And that's the breakthrough, is like having workflow and agent and not just the autocomplete thingy.
And you're saying these sentences, and I'm translating them in real time in my head. So solving simple tasks, simple software, complex tasks, complex software, simple task, complex software. So complex software, for example, let's look at a nuclear facility. Simple task in a nuclear facility, let's have it change from a color red to a color orange when it does something, right? Here's something very specific I want you to do. Complex task in a complex software like a nuclear facility, let's actually have it rotate at a different RPM, given different conditions, and you should think about what those conditions are. And we're not talking about 10 years from now, at least
and when we're doing that, make sure that you are inventing the right tests, the right checks, verifying the best practices, verifying the values, knowing when you need to ask a human if you're not sure. That's part of the end-to-end task, right? Get information. That what you would do as a developer is, if your definition that you got was not clear enough, you would go and ask someone that you feel is in charge and knows the answers. That's also, for me, part of those tools that models will know how to do. When I'm saying like not model, sorry, like system will know how to do when I'm talking about complex task and complex software.
Itamar, this was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me here.
Thank you for having me.
Conversation.